So it's good to see you today on this Sunday morning. I hope you're feeling all right. I
Of
have
course.
really been digging into your works. I have really, of course, I've always, in my upbringing, I've always really enjoyed art. And when I saw your videos, immediately I was just sucked in because I saw that particular culture. It was really ingrained in what you do. Even the more silly videos, it's definitely 100% there. So I just have a few questions I wrote out for you today. Okay, so for me, art was vital to my childhood, like I mentioned just a minute ago. It was presented as something both vitally important and was almost presented as something magical or otherworldly. That was one of the first things I noticed about your channel. That magic that lives in the world of art, that lives in the most famous of art galleries. Was that something that was integral to your upbringing, art, or did it kind of find you?
Well, the reason why I got into art was probably because of my dad, who was a graphic designer growing up, and so he was always like giving me like different tools and stuff to draw with, like pastels or not just like crayons, as a kid, but like nice colored pencils and stuff and different materials. And he went to an art school, which is in Nova Scotia, and I ended up going to
Oh
the
wow.
exact same school, like 20 years later. Um, and So yeah, it would be like basically my dad was the major influence for art because he would take me to like the museum and stuff, and we would learn about paintings and that sort of thing and different artists.
That's amazing that you had that growing up. I mean, you really just were kind of streamlined, thrown into that world from an early age, and that's awesome. I'm glad you had that. I think everyone really needs that piece of culture growing up to truly understand the gravity of some of these works. Because a lot of people, when they see art, they just see a doodle or they just see someone who spent a lot of time putting in detail. They don't
Mhm.
realize the cultural significance of the pieces, what time they came from, and really that projection that they can give just by viewing it. I mean, it gives you
Yes.
a whole world. It's like they say, picture is worth 1,000 words. And honestly, I think it's worth more in some cases. So every video has some sort of story to tell. I've really noticed that. Some kind of hidden lesson within it. Are these ideas primarily something that you come up with as you were creating? Or are they more so something that would spark the idea to begin with? To put it in something that you've referenced before, what came first, the chicken or the egg?
Most of my videos, I think they're just kind of it's like some funny visual I imagine in my head, and it wasn't necessarily like no deeper meaning to it or nothing, no story to it. Like when I first started Interface, it was just like a noodle man running up and scaring Henrik, but like I didn't know who Henrik was. I didn't know,
Really?
yeah, I didn't know where the noodle man came from. Like I didn't know anything really about these characters. I just kind of like when I started the series, it was so spontaneous. I wasn't thinking about any of that stuff. I just wanted to make something. And then like I went to art school, but I went to the film program there and I learned screenwriting and stuff. And so I realized like I can't just have like random shit happening. Like it's
Right.
funny, right? As like an intro, yeah,
Yeah.
but like it still needs to like have some sort of structure to it. And so, it was like a mixture of just me coming up with like funny ideas and then but also trying to tie them together, And I
Okay.
think a lot of the kind of like hitting meetings or like the lessons or morals came from like this my screenwriting background, which is to like the understanding that whatever videos I make, they have to like sort of feel like something
Organic.
cohesive.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Gotcha.
And so it's a mixture of two different things. Yeah.
Okay. What sparked your interest in the Philadelphia experiment? What made it something that you wanted to incorporate into Interface as kind of an inspiration? The idea of that ultimately becoming what really is the framework of Interface. How did that come to be?
I used to watch like when I was a kid growing up. There was a show called I think it was called I don't know. I forget what it was. It was some television show about urban legends or whatever, and they would talk about the Philadelphia experiment. And I thought it was an interesting idea that like if people got teleported, that they'd like be off axis a little bit, so that when they show up, they're like fused into the things that they teleported with. Kind of an interesting idea. And then I like researched it, and of course, I mean, I don't know how you feel about it, but I don't think it like actually happened. I mean, it's just it's like an urban legend that kind of probably the early 20th century people like, you know, how word of mouth kind of like spread
Right.
back then, and it was probably like people seeing ships at or just at the wrong time, or they confusing the name of a ship or something else or whatever it was that made it like teleport, right?
Right. Right.
But I personally like it is something I incorporated into the series, and it is like kind of like the origin of mischief and stuff. But I personally don't think that the series is really about the Philadelphia experiment. It's more about kind of like the Philadelphia experiment is more like a metaphor for how like the Industrial Revolution sort of spurred the innovations that led to the internet and stuff. And now it seems like the whole world's so different from what it was
Oh yeah.
before the 20th century, you know? It's like completely different.
So that's kind of where you got the idea of, you know, the veil being lifting, it changing the world. It was the catalyst. You use that as the catalyst instead of how the internet changed the world today.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
I like that. So clearly you draw a lot of inspiration from a lot of different places, but what first made you come up with the idea of the universe containing spirits that represented certain body parts, like the ghost that took the form of the hand and the octopus that resembled a heart? Was it primarily the works of, I'm going to butcher this name, but Rene Magritte, the one who painted the Son of Man, or as we see in episode 5, or was it from some other inspiration?
It was actually mostly from, well, I used to watch, I like a lot of Studio Gilby movies, and you know how exactly. You know how he has got those like, those kind of like spirits or whatever. And I was researching more about the types of spirits that come from that culture, right? And they have all these different beings and stuff. But the thing is, they don't like have like hands and stuff, or like organs, and so I thought I didn't want to just like copy, you know, 100%. But I thought maybe if each spirit kind of represented like an organ in the body, it would make it more like it would make it tie it more to like when people think about like the archetypes and stuff, and you go back in time, and there's like this book I read called Man and His Symbols, and it's about a lot of like the characters and visualizations you get in your dreams and why they occur. And I just thought that, you know, like for just having like human body parts represent like certain characters was just sort of like an interesting sort of idea, I guess. I didn't really think too much about it. And then I think one of the reasons why I started doing it was because, I don't know, there's like this show I used to watch when I was a kid called Batman Beyond, and the Riddler, you know, like he would fly around on a big hand.
Yeah.
I just thought it was like a interesting visual. So I don't know. I just thought, yeah, I'll start with that, right? Big hand flying around. And kind of led to like more body parts, and I don't know.
Right, so it was really your inspiration then, and you just kind of took a few things to add to that. But so I guess it really was kind of a coincidence then because I looked at some of the other works by Rene, and a lot of it was like hands or eyes, like different body parts, like floating in space. So I thought maybe you took a little bit of inspiration from that, but that was just kind of unconnected.
Yeah, the thing is strange about that is I'm not like, I didn't really know too much about Rene Magritte's paintings before, other than, you know, the Son of Man painting, which is famous. But when I made even episode 5, which features that painting, I didn't really know much about the other paintings, you know. Every time I featured a painting, I would like research at like when I'm making the episode to find out more. And yeah, so I don't know, the organs and stuff, I think it just might have been like a strange coincidence, you know.
Okay, well, I mean, it was perfect, because for me, seeing that, I was like, oh my gosh, he's bringing Rene's world into an actual world. I mean, I guess that wasn't really the intention, but for me, that felt special too, because I felt like something you were already kind of doing is bringing paintings into reality, make what it would be like if it was actually something that existed in the world. So I felt like maybe that realm was also being brought into this, but I mean, it's cool either way. For sure.
Yeah, for sure.
So as a man of the arts, how do you view classical works? Do you view them any differently from like modern works? Do you have a separation between classical and modern? Really?
So I went to art school. I did art history training and classes and stuff. but they didn't really teach us much before the 20th century, because it's not like I didn't learn about like 18th century. Well, actually, that's not true. I did take a class on like 19th century art, which is the 1800s. But I mean, I kind of forget a lot of that stuff, honestly. And they did teach like from the beginning of time, but it was usually like, 4 or 5 classes, and it wasn't like something you really study. Like I could have studied it, but I didn't really go into it too much.
Okay.
So my knowledge of like paintings prior to the 20th century are pretty limited. I do know that they, some painters like Vermeer and about how he used like a camera obscura, I think. They theorize that's what he did.
It does in a way.
Yeah, and like early like Leonardo da Vinci, like how he painted with the materials he used, and I think it was egg tempera or maybe al fresco. I forget exactly. Anyway.
I think it was al fresco, but I'm not really sure either. But
yeah,
I get what you mean though. So you don't really have a separation. You kind of view art as art.
Yeah, well, I mean, most of my knowledge, I guess, is from the 20th century. So I don't really, I don't really in my head though, I don't really separate them though. I just kind of just see it as artwork in general,
So it's more so that people have made it have cultural significance, but it's all still just art. Is the way you view it then.
I do think that with modern art though, like abstract art, it kind of like like Jackson Pollock and stuff. There's one thing I always try to keep in mind is that the reason why Jackson Pollock was so famous and stuff was because of the CIA pouring money into it.
Yeah.
So that they would make him look like more success, like American art's more successful than like Russian art at that time. And so I got to think to myself, like, is it as important as people make it out to be? Some of this modern abstract art, and how much of it is like manufactured? Because it's hard to tell now, especially and I think things have just gotten worse, where now it's just a big, basically money laundering corporation. You don't really know if art really means anything anymore to people who buy it. It could just be a way for them to make more money. It's hard to say really. Like I feel like the art world has kind of shifted just as much as like the internet has changed the world almost, like around the same time. Just everything kind of like
the whole world became a corporation.
Yeah,
basically. I guess we'll go ahead and we'll jump into something that has happened fairly recently. A few weeks ago, you ended Interface. So do you miss it any? Miss working on it?
I do sort of miss having like something I know that I'm gonna have to work on. Right now, I'm just taking a break because I'm still working like almost every day. I'm like designing the box art I'm doing VHS release. So.
I can't wait. Very excited for that. I still have my VHS player, so I'm ready.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I was like surprised, but a lot of people really want a VHS, so I'm gonna go all out and make it super nice. And I can't get pink VHS tapes, so I try to do that, but they don't even make them anymore. So I guess I don't know. I'm trying to just take my time to just not think too hard about it, and I know that if I want to make a new series, all it's preventing me from doing it is just sitting down and starting it. I don't have to worry about a big studio approving something or something like that. However, I will say that towards the end of Interface, it was getting really kind of I was like overworking myself, and it gets very isolating sometimes because I'm just inside all day animating, and sometimes I wonder if if I did have a team of people, like a studio funded, if I pitched a pilot to some network, whatever, and they actually funded it, would it be better for everyone? Because the fans will get more content. I would be able to focus on more of just the creative stuff rather than just literally drawing everything.
Absolutely, yeah.
And then maybe I might feel a little bit less like isolated from just sitting in here all the time. So I'm apprehensive. I'm not like I'm worried that I'm like I'll kind of like I'll start a new series and it will just become this big thing again for me where I won't be able to escape from, because if I'm starting something, I need to finish it, you know?
Yeah.
So I'm so happy that I finished Interface, because now I didn't like trail off into obscurity and just leave it open-ended. I put a pretty good ending, I think.
Oh yeah.
And there's a lot of aspects of the story I really wish I could have fleshed out more. But I mean, I would have been here for another 5 years probably if I really. And I have to decide what is the arc and the story and the meaning of Interface. And I think it having the episodes that it does right now, it's pretty cohesive, and it ends Henrik's story, which is the point of it, in my opinion. Not necessarily for Mischief. I mean, he might come back sometime.
Right. I mean, he needs to. Mischief is amazing. Was he something that was inspired, or was that just kind of a thing in the moment, Mischief?
I don't know, really. Back when I was in like art school, I had like a sketchbook, and we were told to draw like in it every day. And I'm not, I don't really keep sketchbooks or journals. Like they tell us like write journal entries and stuff too, and I just ended up just doodling in it all the time. Anyway, I just drew these like weird clown guys, and Mischief, I don't know what, like in 2009 I was trying to like get into drawing comics, and so I had some Bristol paper and I was drawing comics, and I drew the first episode of Interface in comic form, and it's like Henrik at a bus stop, and then there's the Mischief shows up behind him, and it's a little bit different. The dialogues, he doesn't say anything about the Philadelphia experiment. He basically just immediately says that I'm a bus, and then he's not even in a bus shape. He's just being an idiot. And then Henrik turns around and is like, I haven't taken a bus in years, and then Mischief's like, welcome to the bus or something. I don't. It's just a little bit more. It make less sense, I guess, in the first episode of Interface, which is kind of, I mean, that doesn't really make much sense on the first viewing anyway.
Okay. Well, it seems to me, because this is kind of what's happened with me throughout my life. I'm not an artist, but I make things and I write and I do things like that. So it seems to me that the best ideas most of the time are something that you just make in the moment. It's not something you really ponder upon or really construct. That kind of comes later, it seems like to me. So that Mischief definitely seems like he'd be that kind of just soul burst creation. So that's cool.
I think it makes sense for his character. I mean, if I try to overthink Mischief, I think it would come across as like ungenuine, because he's so like chaotic and stuff, you know?
If you were ever to create a sequel to Interface, maybe like a spin-off or something, would you pull from the same inspirations, or would you focus primarily on the other works of art for inspiration?
I would probably do completely different pieces of art, because I think what I said about the ones that are featured in Interface has been said from my perspective, and there's plenty of art out there in the world that could be explored in different ways. I don't really have any idea of what art I have in mind, though. That's there's, I'd have to do some looking around and maybe feature less surrealism even. I mean, there's some paintings in my series that I feature that aren't surrealist. I feel like even the ones that aren't still have aspects to them that feel surreal. Christina's world is just a woman in the grass, like looking at her house. But it's kind of like it feels surreal almost just from looking at it. It feels very like dreamlike and kind of ethereal, I guess. So, yeah.
But when I see that painting in particular, what I think of, the first thing I think of is that she was dropped off by aliens. Like, this is right after an abduction. She's laying in the grass, like, what the heck just happened? Reaching up towards her house, like, I need to get back. So, definitely see that surrealism there.
The interesting thing about that painting is people like it because it feels like she's kind of like relaxing or like looking towards her house in terms of memories or whatever. But I think Andrew Wyeth, I think the guy who painted it, it was like at a house that he was living in for a period of time, and I think the woman was actually disabled and she couldn't use her legs, and so she was like actually just like walking, like trying to like get to the house, right?
Oh wow.
So that's an interesting thing about it, because a lot of people don't know that about the painting, and it's it kind of like changes the whole. It almost changes like how you interpret it to some degree. And it makes you wonder, like, when you look at paintings without knowing the backstory, like how, like, your interpretations are valid because whatever it is, it gives you meaning from looking at it. But then when you read about the context, it kind of like changes it. I don't know if it's a good thing if you know more than just the visuals that it gives you, you know?
Yeah, that's kind of that magic that I was really presenting earlier. When you look at
Yeah.
something and you can come up with like 4 or 5 different interpretations just in the first few moments. And I feel like a lot of modern pieces of art don't particularly have that. Some of them do, but it's more of a rarity than it was. When I look back at, I mean, it could just be they selected the pieces that were the most thought-provoking. But when I go to like a classic art gallery, everything I look at gives me that feeling, and I really get that with your work. But a lot of modern art, I don't. So I'm not sure what happened there. It might be like you said, the corporatism of it, but
I believe personally that the art world right now, even in the non-Christie's, Sotheby's part, like the museum world too, has just been kind of infiltrated by like sort of identity politics. And there's a lot of things in conceptual art which just I personally don't really get it. You know, it's maybe some people get it and are moved by it, but I don't feel like I used to feel like when I go to a museum, I'm supposed to appreciate everything that I see because it's on a wall, but not anymore. Like, if I see something and it just looks like whatever, I'm just like, next, move on. Like, the thing is, it's weird about museums. It's like you almost feel like you have to appreciate something just because it's in a museum. But then, like, you could literally just, these days, you could just take a garbage bag, throw it at the wall in a museum, and then people will look at it and be like, okay, interesting. So I don't know, like these days, like it's hard to find stuff that I'm really interested in when I go to the museums here in Montreal. But there's definitely some still cool stuff being made. Just there's a lot of I feel like there's a lot of noise, honestly, that's just.
Yeah, I think it's kind of shifted from an emotional standpoint where you're kind of putting what you're feeling onto a canvas more to, I'm going to put this idea on a canvas. So it kind of limits it somewhat. And since they've got that idea in mind when they're making it, instead of just painting from the soul, it's more so they want you to, like you said, politics, they want you to think a certain way. And then them trying to force the painting into jutting this idea out, they've lost that magic of it making you think and project inward because you're seeing the emotion, and so you start feeling emotion and then you look inward to your own emotions. I think that's kind of where we lost that magic somewhat.
Yeah, I think the curators can sometimes influence how you perceive an image from their little writing blurb that they have inside of the painting. And sometimes you want to know more about the painting, so you read it, but then you realize, wait a second, this curator's got an agenda, or they got some sort of political bias. You can obviously tell from how they wrote this, but it's, I don't know, it's a little bit frustrating sometimes in Montreal when I see that, because, it's almost like they're rewriting history. It depends on who the curator is,
Yeah.
and what their influences are. So, and I personally go to the museum to see the artwork, not to hear the curator's opinions.
Yeah, honestly, I really don't think they should have descriptions on it, because once you have solved a piece of art, in my opinion, it's no longer art. If it doesn't have something open-ended, I don't know why, but that just stuck with me for some reason. This idea of if it's not open-ended, it's not true art. I mean, that's not true, but when they have the plaques and it tells what it's about, it takes away the fun of trying to guess. Like, it's almost like a puzzle. And when you see a real painting, something that's famous, you start to notice all the little details, and it's like a puzzle. And taking away that interaction is what dehumanizes the art, because it's no longer an experience. At that point, it's just like, hey, this is something that was done. This is what it means. Move on. It almost dismisses you from the painting.
Yeah.
In a way. Yeah.
I would love to see a museum that would just have facts about the artist, just
where they were at when
facts.
they painted it. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And maybe if they had old letters or even videos, these artists of just what they said about their own work. Mm-hmm. I think that would be fantastic,
Oh yeah.
Because it's like going to it's almost like I don't know, like going to a movie and watching a movie, and then the context that you get for it is the movie review, you know? Like,
Right. They can do the review as you're going in.
yeah.
Basically. Yeah. Yeah, I agree, definitely. If not for interface and you had to pick a topic for a new web series, what topic would most interest you? Do you already have one in mind that would be kind of in the place of the Philadelphia experiment? Is there some other kind of big event or curiosity that you would try to connect to a new series?
I think it would be in some sort of a consciousness that's made by the AI. So,
Okay.
so the interface where at the end where he's Mr. Greetings is trying to get Henrik to join the interface, which is basically the consciousness of this god-like creature. If I were to make another series, it would take place within that consciousness, because I would be able to do things that are completely abstract. Like in interface, I still kind of, it took place in the real world to some degree, even though there's like creatures and stuff like that. And but within the interface, I could just have like all the laws of like physics don't even need to.
Right. Yeah. That'd be super interesting.
Yeah, and I feel like it would be interesting and it would be even stronger than just doing that initially, because it's based on what came before it, the storyline of interface. So there's like a backstory to the universe almost, you know? So that's probably what I would do. I'm just not sure if I want to do it right now. I'm not, yeah.
Well, what's really interesting about that concept is you could kind of even use that to parallel the real world and the possibility that we are in a simulation. I mean, that's something that's been debated for a long time. You could really draw those parallels and really make people think with that, I feel like. And
Yeah,
you said the laws wouldn't apply. So that would be really interesting, because you could really, really take pieces of art then, and you could actually project certain parts of that world into that art style. Like things being on the ceiling, you know, that I can't think of the name of it now, but the painting with all the stairs going different directions, you could actually have that be an area, things like that. That'd be super interesting. I would love to see that. Oh yeah, absolutely.
MC Escher's, I don't know what it's called though, but it's MC Escher's painting, I guess.
Yeah,
or drawing.
Yeah, I'm awful with the names of paintings.
Yeah, yeah, same here.
Well, we're coming up to the end of the questions here. So lastly, and this may have been answered by the time we get here, I don't think it was quite, but you oftentimes feel, why do you oftentimes include famous art pieces in your works? That's what really set you apart for me. It brought that essence of wisdom that comes from gazing at the world for many years that you get with some of those paintings. But it's also without the veils that most people use to perceive reality. So it was really something kind of beyond. What really made you want to make sure that you include those older works of art into your videos?
I think of the time period in which the art was made kind of acts as a like a milestone for like that era. And so you have, for instance, the Salvador Dali painting of the man breaking through the earth and stuff, leaving, which I kind of based a lot of Mischief's character on, him breaking through the earth. And it's like a metaphor, like I was saying earlier, for the Industrial Revolution and how everything has changed so much. It's like the man today, or women, or just people in general, like they're completely different. Not only have they changed, they've also literally left Earth for the first time. You know, we did leave, and now we're almost going to become a interplanetary species as soon as someone sets up a base on Mars, you know, which might even happen in my lifetime, which is crazy to think about.
I know. It really is. Yeah. It's crazy how quickly we came from the 80s, where we were talking about space and we were just really getting into technology, and now we're about to become basically like a Star Trek, Star Wars type civilization. It's just, it happens so quickly, and it amazes me how things such as the internet brought us into a new collective consciousness and kind of projected us this quickly. I never would have thought that something we produced here inward would bring us outward into space like that.
Yeah, it's overwhelming to think about, but it's exciting at the same time, you know. Like the reason why I use certain paintings is just because they're like reflective of society from around the time that they made them. So you have like a timeline of history almost, and so I like using the paintings in that way. That's all.
Yeah, I've never really, I mean, that's awesome. I didn't make that connection before. I was thinking more so it was trying to bring us into realms that were similar to the type of realm that you created yourself. But yeah, setting it as milestones for time. I never really thought of it that way, but that's really good idea. I'm kind of blown away with that. I'm like, oh yeah, it's perfect. It did match up with the times, because I noticed that when I was doing the research, but for some reason those two never clicked.
That painting of geopolitical child watching, I forget what the name of the painting is, but it's the one with, you know, the character coming out of the earth in the eggshell. It was actually painted in 1943.
Wow.
Which is the exact same year of the Philadelphia experiment. So I remember when I researched that, I was like looking for paintings that were made in 1943 so it could match up. And I was like, oh, this is perfect.
Right.
It was weird. It was really weird. No.
Yeah, that was actually a piece I'd never seen before. So at first I thought maybe you made that to represent the story, but then once I found out it was an actual painting, I was like, oh my gosh, this is almost too well balanced there. It's almost too much to be a coincidence. It almost seems like that was just made to be that piece. Seriously. Yeah. It's very weird, but it was awesome. I mean, everything you've done with this series has been incredible, and the cohesiveness is just, I can tell you put a lot of yourself, a lot of time and effort into this, and it's way more than most animations. They tell a story and they move on, maybe have some cultural references, some symbology in it, but I really feel that Interface as a whole has been you really poured into it, and you kept the whole thing cohesive. And from the beginning, I feel like there's been some elements from the beginning that you really held on to, and you really made the whole thing symbolic, or like you said, organic piece. And that's something really special. You've really done something special with Interface.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
It's honestly right now, from everything I've seen, and honestly from most things I've seen on TV, it's one of my favorite series, if not my favorite series ever. I love the feeling I get when I watch it. I've watched it at least 40 times. I'm serious.
I appreciate that a lot. Yeah. I just feel like a lot of television these days is just not, it's too fast, it's too fast paced. It doesn't allow people to think, really soak in the visuals, and sometimes it's kind of disappointing because like you got like this amazing looking shot that looks like they did a lot of work on the animation, and it's like 5 seconds long. You don't even get to look at it. You know what I mean? Yeah. How quickly it is. Some of these shots are.
You almost got to take it into your editing software and freeze frame to actually enjoy the show. Yeah. I've noticed that with music as well. There'll be some parts in the songs that you really enjoy, but it'll only be like maybe 1/10 of the actual song. It's art in general in any medium whatsoever. It's a really odd shift.
I don't know, the music these days, it's just like everything. People are trying to optimize things for the algorithm. It could be that they do that intentionally so that you play it back again and again and again. I know that some songs, well, algorithmically, they've actually shortened the length of songs.
Really?
It used to be, on average, they're getting shorter than they used to be because of Spotify and stuff. View count is so important. They want you to, rather than make like, a 7-minute song with like the phrasings or whatever that sounds, motifs that sound similar, they'll just do it for like 3 minutes or 2.5 minutes. So you just play it over and over again.
Gotcha. Yeah, I haven't really noticed myself because I don't really listen to mainstream music. Most of the time, if I'm listening to something kind of mainstream, it's something that Damon Albarn produced, and he doesn't care. Yeah. So,
no, for sure. I don't like listening to it either. But I noticed the trends in the music world because I don't really say I'm like super into like being a musician or whatever. But I just make music for myself, really. And these are things that people talk about when they make music. They like notice the trends and like how, and it used to be how I don't know if you heard about the loudness wars where they would compress the audio to be very like pancake. Did you ever see like a waveform? Yeah, it would look like a rectangle almost, because when you put it on the radio, it's like they want it to be as loud as possible. Now it's almost the opposite, because it's all based on Spotify's algorithm, which it will set the volume of your music to be averaged out, I guess, across all music. And so if you have a pancaked mix, it will actually bring down the mix, and then you're going to actually sound quieter than a song that has like more dynamic range. Wow. Yeah. So that whole method has been put on its head, basically, of mixing music. I don't know.
Yeah, that's such an odd thing. I miss that. Not that I lived through those days, but I miss observing the days when the art was the focus, the thoughts of the artist was the focus, and it was everything in the world wasn't so algorithm based. And that's really the downside to the internet uniting everything, is it's really streamlined everything into a corporate figure. And I hope that the future generations will see works like yours and they'll be inspired to try to recreate that feeling, because it resonates more with them than the cookie cutter 2-minute songs and the the movies that are just scene, no progression or really emotion thrown into it too much. I hope that they see works like yours and they're inspired to make the future something a little more robust. The main thing that really got me with your series is that, and honestly, it's not just your series, it's your whole channel, is that I get that feeling of walking through an art gallery, but I also get that feeling of excitement that I get from newer media. So it's almost like a more easily digestible, excitable version of an art gallery. And I feel like that'll really attract people that are already looking for that, not really a dopamine, but it's almost like that. Like they get that quick shot of energetic excitement. So they'll get that still, but they'll also be exposed to this world that I'm trying to communicate here. And I really think that if they can see that and realize how unique and robust and how amazing it can really be, that I feel like art might actually have a chance to return somewhat to those roots. And I'm really hopeful for that. And I feel like people like you are going to be the forerunners to that. You're going to really be at the head of this new movement if it happens. So I want to thank you for making a series like that. I want to thank you for all the time you put into it. And I hope that I don't think you'll ever shift off to that mainstream type of content, but I hope that you stick with it, because you've been an inspiration to me, and you're an inspiration to a lot of people that I've talked to. And I just again, thank you for taking the time necessary to do something like that.
I appreciate that a lot. Well, thanks. Thank you.
Thank you. Really. So just thank you for taking time to talk to me today. I've really enjoyed this conversation. I really enjoyed getting into your head and hearing your thoughts on all these ideas that I've kind of had trouble communicating myself without talking to someone else about it. That mystical feeling of art and the what's kind of been lost in modern art. So thank you for going through that with me and really helping me to expand on those things.
Of course, man. And same goes for you too. I appreciate the reviews you've been doing on Interface and stuff. I like seeing people talk about it out there outside my own channel. So yeah,
absolutely. I'd love to make more. One of the things I really want to do going forward with my series on Interface is I really want to go more into how you could relate the pieces from that time to kind of what you were saying to what's actually going on. So it actually was a little bit more of your mindset when going into it than I realized. But I really want to take the cultural significances and things like the sunflower, how you kept showing that, and really show the symbology behind it and how that connects into what mischief is.
Yeah.
And just go a little more into the stories you don't quite notice on the surface without really digging. So I'm looking forward to doing that, and I hope you'll enjoy it too, because it's your content, and I'm trying to really get what you did with Interface out there, because a lot of people just watching it aren't going to get it. But I feel like if I can get these into the world, maybe they'll realize there's more depth to it, and it'll really be discovered and cherished as something that was a huge impact on the way art flowed from that point forward for those who saw it. And I just really want to give it the attention to detail that it deserves. Definitely.
So I appreciate it. Thank you. Okay, so I was looking this up. The Tribeca Film Festival has a web series category.
Oh,
and it's good. It's called Tribeca Now. However, the web series could not have been uploaded to the internet.
I saw that.
Yeah, I was like, what? Who makes web series and just sits on it for a year?
Right. Has that ever happened in the history of web series?
I don't know.
I mean,
but
really.
Anyway, so there's not too many festivals I can even submit to, but we'll see if it gets in. Something that'd be cool.
Well, actually, I have an idea for that. If you'd want to communicate the world of Interface into that mode, I wonder I don't know if you could compress it that much and it still had the same effect, but I'm wondering if maybe you could take the idea and the storyline of Interface and maybe compress it into like a 10, 15-minute version that has maybe just, I mean, you could even reuse some of the artwork, but maybe, I don't know, maybe kind of redo it in a different style, but just something that wouldn't take so incredibly large amount of time, but connect that story and that element and the feeling somehow in a smaller version.
I was thinking of doing like a 10-minute thing that I didn't release on the internet, and then so I could submit it to film festivals, and then maybe kind of make it similar in style and stuff. But I don't want to like put things behind a paywall, you know what I mean? Because then I wouldn't really be able to release it. And then anyway, I don't know.
Well, it was worth a shot. I really want everybody to be able to see this. But of course, if you do make a film for the festival and it gets a lot of popularity, they'll be looking for you. So they'll find it anyway if
That'd
that
be cool.
happens. But yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to more of, I'm pretty sure you're going to be making more of the short animations that aren't really connected to anything, because I really enjoy those. Like
there's a soups on one I'm working
Ooh,
on.
nice.
And after that, I got a few ideas for some other stuff. Oh, I got a board right here. I can run through some of my really stupid ideas. Number 2 is Batman gets shot in the mouth. So, you know how he's got like a face mask, except for like it covers his whole body except for his mouth.
Yeah,
just like shoot him in the mouth, shoot him in the mouth, and he goes back home to his bat cave. He takes off his mouth. His mouth is just destroyed. It's probably not a good idea.
It is, but I don't know if I would have it quite in that level of graphic content, just because of YouTube.
It doesn't really quite fit in with my usual stuff. So.
Right, yeah. I mean, I can see it kind of being more on the end of the Sonic animation, kind of on that like shot content. But
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I think you'll find a way. If you want to make that a thing, I know you'll find a way to make that YouTube palpable.
Yeah.
All right. Well, it was great talking to you today. I've really enjoyed this conversation. Thank you.
Yeah, Grant. Yeah, sure. And have a good weekend. Bye.
You too. You too. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank our patrons. Thank you all for everything you do to support what I do. Investigator Zeus, Dobby's Music, Vexus, Jerry Mullins, Phantasm 7, and CNK114. Thank you all again for keeping this channel and my other projects going.